Hey, kia ora. Helen Brahms here, coming to you live from Surprise in Arizona. Hope you're having a super fantastic sparkling day. Welcome to Before the Dirt Nap podcast number 1515, 6 years later. So it was 6 years ago today that Brad slipped from this world to the next, very peacefully, very quietly, just in the early hours before dawn. And it's hit me hard this year. I will admit that. I have usually on this day, I will do a movie marathon as a tribute to him for some of his favorite movies, but I didn't feel like doing that today. And I was sort of like I've been kind of like out of sorts all day. And I have to say, Zeffie's been a trooper the entire day. She's been coming in and checking on me and making sure I'm okay. And just sitting next to me. She sat between my legs with her back to me and just sat there and got like a complete 10-minute rub down. And she just sat there and just took it. And it was very healing and very soothing. Um, if you've ever lost a loved one, you'll know some of the things that you go through and the grief. And they always say that time heals. It's like that's the biggest load of crap ever. There's always the pain there. And today, for some reason, it just felt super, super fresh today. And it just felt like it was this morning. It really did, even though it was 6 years ago. It felt like it all happened this morning. So I've just been having a very quiet day today. I did at one point do a TikTok live with unboxing a bark box. So those of you that usually follow it on Facebook Live, when I do a bark box unboxing for Zeffie, sorry, I did it on TikTok today. I'm just waiting for TikTok to download it so I can upload it to YouTube and then put the link for you guys to be able to go see it. So apologies for that. I was just trying out the TikTok Live to see how that would go. And my phone isn't smart enough to do both TikTok Live and Facebook Live at the same time. It would be good if it could, but that's beside the point. So I just had a very quiet day. I did my posting for Brad, and this morning I got up. It was hard to get out of bed this morning. Normally I bounce out of bed, but it was hard to get out of bed this morning. And so then I went and took Zeffie for her walk. We came home, we had breakfast. It was bacon and egg pie. If you didn't see my photos yesterday, I made 2 bacon and egg pies last night. And somebody actually messaged me and asked me, is that really a thing? And it's like, oh yeah, it's in my Edmonds cookbook. It's in the grandmother of all cookbooks in New Zealand. It's the Edmonds cookbook, and it has in there bacon and egg pie. So yes, it is a very real thing. And I can remember being at different places, visiting different people and stuff. And it's very quick and very easy to make. It's just like you just make up the pastry. If you want to make it from scratch, or you could get the frozen. They come in, I think they're like bricks or something, like thick bricks that you could defrost that and unload it and roll it out and all that sort of stuff. But most people I know would make their pastry from scratch, and then make the flaky pastry, which I love the flaky pastry, and the puff pastry. I love that too. And they'd line a baking tin, and then they'd put in bacon. Now in New Zealand, we don't have just the little rashers. If you've ever been on a cruise ship and they have the British breakfast section, in there they have what I consider real bacon, where you have the rasher, but then you also have the other part of the meat in as well. So the rasher is this piece, and then there's a bit of meat that comes in here. And you just chop it up and toss it in there. And with the eggs, you can either beat the eggs up and pour the eggs into the thing, or what I like to do from time to time is just stand there and just crack open the eggs straight into the pie. No breaking the yolks, no nothing, just letting them sit in there. I think I put 8 eggs in each pie last night, and it was half a pound of bacon into each pie. It was really good. And this one does not normally perform when I eat and don't give her anything. She kicked up a stink. She was sitting by the table when I was eating and whining and putting her paw on my legs and to say, I want some of that, because it must have smelled really, really good to her. But she got a couple little tidbits. But I've never seen her so vocal before when I'm eating. But yeah, so I had that for breakfast, and then it was sort of like, oh, what do I do now? And just sort of kind of like bummed around for a bit, listened to my audiobook and did some puzzle. I got a puzzle book that I'm working through. So I did some puzzles, and then I came in and did my tribute to Brad on Facebook today. And Then I went back into the living room. I was like, do I really want to watch him? I was like, I'm not in the mood for watching a movie today. And so I thought, I'm just going to lay on the couch. I'm going to get my iPad out. I'm going to play that new Family Tree game that I found from the App Store. And if you haven't heard about the new Family Tree, it's a Family Tree logic puzzle. And basically it says that, this person had 3 children. The middle one is this. And then the clue won't go, the clue doesn't disappear until you have the mother or the father. They give you the names of everybody. They give you the names. And then you got to figure out their relationships. You got to figure out where in the tree they fit. And you drag and drop their heads. Because they give you headshots. You drag and drop their little headshots into the right slots based on the clues that are given. There's names underneath, so it's got a little bubble with a picture, and then it's got a little name underneath, and then you got to drag and drop them into the right places on the tree. And it really does test your genealogical skills. There are sometimes I'm sitting there and I'm like going, okay, so this person, and it will tell you this person gets is the great grandson of this person. You look at the tree and go, oh, there's a few more possibilities in life. Because you start counting up, you're going child, parent, grandparents, great grandparents. Oh, we've got a 2 great grandparent on this tree. Now which one is the great grandparent? Is the great grandparent? So it does challenge you a little bit at times. But I didn't even get through the first tree, and I was just like, I feel sleepy. And so I had a blanket over me. Got this really nice, comfy, soft, snuggly blanket that has foot pockets in the bottom of it. And so I had that on me, and I just put the iPad down, and I just drifted off to sleep and slept for a couple of hours. I did come aware of Zeffie coming in a couple of times and sniffing me. Just sniffing to make sure I was still okay. And because I could hear a jingle on the collars and that. And then after I woke up, I was like, oh, what do I want to know? Maybe we'll go do a bark box. No. And I kept going backwards and forwards, and I just thought, well, we're going to open a bark box. And so we got all set up with that. And Zeffie got her bark box opened and took more interest in the cardboard that was on the back of one of the toys. She actually broke the toy. I was holding onto the toy, and she pulled the cardboard and took away with that and started chomping on it. But yeah, we still got some more bark boxes to go to. So we did that, and then it was sort of like, oh, now what do we do? And then I realized I haven't had lunch yet. It's 6:00 in the evening, and I still haven't had lunch. So I'm sort of like, oh, guess I better do something about that. But I did. I was going to make a protein shake with a coffee, a mushroom coffee base, and but I needed to let it cool down. So the mushroom coffee is still sitting in the refrigerator, waiting to be added to the blender with the protein powder and some frozen fruits and vegetables. I think it's got kale and spinach in with it's got frozen fruit. I think it's got, was it mango, banana, raspberries, kiwi fruit, kale and spinach. I have a feeling I'm missing a fruit in there. But anyway, I just dumped that, So it's all sitting there waiting, ready to go, and I just haven't done it yet. So, but I really don't want to do it for dinner because it'll probably keep me up all night. But I did wake up with kind of like a tickle in the throat, and I was sort of like, oh, that doesn't feel good. So yeah, we're going to be taking care of that. We watched a couple more episodes of Arrow. We're on to the second to last season of it. It's kind of getting a little boring because I find that with a lot of the TV programs that I binge watch, is that I usually get to season 3 and then I'm completely lost interest in it. For some reason, I keep going with this one. I'm now up to season 7. There's 8 seasons, and I'm just sort of like, I am really bored with this. But I do like when they go into the other worlds and stuff. But in order to find out the full story, you have to go to these different programs on these different episodes and days, and it's sort of like, oh, it's too much work, because they do these crossover things, and they have ones that will go for like 4 parts, and there's 4 different programs that you have to go to, and you've got to work out what season do I have to go to, and what episode do I have to see, and in which order do I have to do them. And I'm just like, oh, I can't be bothered doing that. So yeah, it's just been a very quiet day, doing nothing much, staying offline. And this is my second time at the computer, because I was here earlier today doing a tribute to Brad. But like I said, I woke up this morning, it just felt so fresh. It felt like it just passed, even though it's 6 years ago. And there's a lot that's happened in the 6 years. And there's days it feels like it was a decade ago, and other days it just feels like it was last week, last month. Grief is a weird It's just a weird thing. And it really is harder for those that are left behind because we have to go through all this crap. And I'm so like, ay. Just the emotional roller coaster and all of that. And I did not see any I haven't seen any hummingbirds out on our walks for the last week. It's kind of concerned me because usually when I see hummingbirds, I always think they're bred. And I haven't seen any hummingbirds for the last week. So I was sort of like, oh. And I thought I would see some today. Nope, didn't see any today. So that kind of upset me a little bit that I didn't see any hummingbirds. But we still had a good walk. And we're going to go and get another good walk in, aren't we, Zeph? She's been such a trooper today. She's been, wherever I go, she follows me, and she has this little furrow, this little wrinkles between her brows here that she has, and it's sort of like a little worried look that she has. And I'm sort of like, I'm okay, but she'll come over so I can pet her and all of that, and that does help calm things down. And if I start getting upset, she comes over to me and I start petting her, and the upset bit goes away. But I've just been feeling very tired and very drained today, and I think and feeling this tickle in my throat. I'm like, oh yes, we've been stressing, and it's attacking the immune system. So we're boosting the immune system. I took all my vitamins and supplements today, and I'm going to go OD on some vitamin C like I usually do, and make some green tea with some honey. Green tea with lemon and honey always helps as well. So I'm going to go take care of me. That's all I've been doing, is just sitting quietly and taking care of me today. So, I think the question I put in today is, what are some of your favorite memories of people that have passed, of loved ones that have passed? And I have so many great memories with Brad. I really do. I remember our engagement like it was yesterday, the day we got engaged. That was kind of fun. Yeah, we learned about the Irish that got sent to Australia. I can walk you through every minute of that time when we went out. We went to Old Town Alexandria in Virginia, and where he took me to the park bench. I can walk you right to the park bench and show you exactly the park bench where it was. I can sit down on that park bench. I can close my eyes and tell you the exact sounds I heard and what direction they were coming from and everything. It is that vivid in my head, which is what this morning was like with Brad's passing. And and we went to the Irish pub afterwards. And I remember reading the placemat in the Irish pub about these 5 Irishmen who had committed treason, I think it was treason. They had committed treason against the crown. And so Queen Victoria was actually going to have them executed for treason. And the public had such a huge uproar about it that she was advised to send them to Australia, where the convict colony was. And so sent them down there. And then years later, she got this letter from the governor of Australia. I think it was the governor of Australia, or some high-ranking political office that this person held, and the name sounded familiar. So she had it investigated, and it turned out he was one of the 5 that got sent down. So she had the other 4 investigated, and one of them was like the governor of Texas, and the other, I always remember the Texas one. I don't know why. It's the only one. I think it was the only one that was outside of Australia. But the other 4 all held these high-ranking officers within Australia, and I thought it was absolutely hilarious. One of them was the premier of this and the premier of that, and yeah, they all had these high political places that they held. I just remember reading that story and just cracking up laughing about it. But we had a good night that night, and I got to see the owner of an Irish pub, wearing the tattiest. It really needed replacing. It was like a unicorn. He had the unicorn hat with a horn coming out of the top, and it kind of like velcroed underneath his chin, so it came over his shoulders and chest and on his head, this unicorn thing. And we weren't sitting that close to where the stage was. We were back, but when I was looking, I was like, that thing so needs replacing. And the unicorn had a dent in its horn. It was like flopping over. I was sort of like, that thing needs to be retired and a new one gotten in. But it was a lot of fun, a lot of Irish songs being played, and he was up there for the unicorn song, which I hadn't sung in years. That was a lot. But a lot of the songs that they sang one thing I like about Irish pubs, they play all these songs that you can sing along to, all these old Irish songs, and it's a lot of fun. And it was, I just remember that from that evening, is that we had a lot of fun that evening, and in our celebration. I had fish and chips at the Irish pub, and I can't remember what Brad had though. Did he have? No, he didn't have fish and chips. He had something with sauerkraut in it. Oh, he might have had. He probably would have had the corned beef and cabbage. That's what he had, corned beef and cabbage. So it's different. But it was a fun night, and I always remember that fondly. And yes, I am starting to write these down. So when you remember these memories, start writing them down. Just talk. Take a recording app on your phone, or if you've got a little digital recorder, even if you just, when you're talking about memories and when you're with people and you're talking memories of things that you've done, places you've been, just have something recording it so you can go back later and you can write up the transcript and boom, so then you have a book of memories that you can write up, print out, and give copies to family. It makes great Christmas gifts. And what did I do with that? Where did that go? There is an album I dug out of a box the other day. Oh, maybe in the other room. Yeah, it looks like it's in the other room. Yep, it's in the other room. But I found this album the other day, and it's the one that my mum put together for me that has all these pictures of me through the years. So I'd have to go back and find that again. It's out in the other room. But there's a lot, just looking through that, there's a lot of memories that come flooding back in. So I'm going to use that as my prompt to go write some of my stories and things. But, and I'm doing the same thing with the pictures of Brad. I can tell you stories about, when that picture was taken, what was happening. There's a really cool picture in the Facebook post. So there's a really cool picture of Brad and I with my mum and dad. And we've got these really cool drinks in front of us. They're in these glasses that were about this round, and the stem was about this high, but the whole thing stood about this high. And we're having frozen hot chocolates at Serendipity 3 in New York. And ever since I saw the movie Serendipity, I'd always wanted to go to the Serendipity store in New York. Yes, the front looks, in the movie, they show you the front of the restaurant, which is the real front of the restaurant. But when they're doing all the scenes inside, completely different. This place was dark. It wasn't light and bright like it was in the movie. It had this older style furniture in there and we went up these creaky stairs up to the second floor, which is where our table was. And you see in the picture that that's the table that we're sitting at in that picture. But that was a really fun night. And we'd walked a lot that day. We had done a lot of walking that day. And we walked from the Marriott down there in Times Square all the way up to this restaurant. And when we got there, now we had booked in, and you can book in for meals and you can book it for a time that you can arrive. And that's when you go onto the waiting with the waiting list. So all those people waiting in line, you get to go in before them. And there was some kerfuffle with the reservation, but I had the piece of paper that confirmed my reservation and everything else. And they said, we're not going to have a table ready for you for about an hour, so come back in an hour. I says, okay, we can do that. So we just wandered off down the road a little bit and found a place to sit and chat. And then we went back to the restaurant, and they then took us upstairs, and we had this wonderful meal. And then we had these frozen hot chocolates for dessert. And I have to tell you, they were the best. They were awesome. But it gave us enough energy to get to walk back to the hotel. We walked everywhere. There was only 2 times we drove while we were in New York. Well, one, we actually took a taxi cab from the hotel down to the lower end of Manhattan, where we went to, was it Ascot Theatre? I think it was Ascot Theatre, but Blue Man Group was there. And Brad had always said if we go to New York City, one thing he wants to do is go and see a Blue Man Group show. And we got tickets front row. I booked us tickets front row. And how narrow the roads were. Now, Brad was 6'5", but his height was actually in his torso, not in his legs. But his legs were were butted up against the stage. It was very narrow. And Brad was on the aisle, then me, then my mum and dad, and there was actually an empty seat by the wall. And they gave us these rain ponchos and things. And I'd warned my mum ahead of time that, this is the kind of, it's going to be, it might be loud, but there's a lot of fun things. And I said, we have to wear these rain ponchos. And she's like, why? I said, because you could get wet, you could get splattered with paint, or they could throw food at you. She says, well, can I throw the food back? So this was on this trip. It was a great, and of course they start, while you're sitting and you're waiting, there's this thump, 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 thump music that's playing. My mother's like, is it going to be like this the whole show? I says, not quite, but yes, there will be a lot of thumping because they're percussionists. And she's like, oh, but she had a blast. We all had a blast. Brad was super happy that we had gotten to see the show live because he'd seen it so often on TV, and we got to see that show live. And we're actually up there Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, and we left the day after Christmas Day. We did drive down at one point to go and sit. This was when was that? 2000 and when did we do that trip? It was after 9/11. We went to New Zealand in 2002. That would have been 2004 when they came up. And so it was Christmas 2003 into 2004. And so we were there we arrived like the day before Christmas Eve. We were there for 3 nights, and we left the day after Christmas. But we did at one point get in the car and drove down to Ground Zero so we could wander around that and see that. And then we went over to this building that they had where they had people who had submitted designs for memorials and things like that to go on that space. So that was pretty cool to see as well. But yeah, that was pretty sobering. And we went down to Battery Park. We didn't get to Ellis Island or Statue of Liberty because I think they were still closed at the time to the public. But we could see them from where we were at Battery Park. But that was that was a Christmas Day. We did that. We did that on Christmas Day. And then the next day we went to leave the hotel, and they brought our minivan up for us. And we're packing the stuff into the minivan, and Brad goes to drive, and he can't disengage the brake. The park brake would not disengage. And we were sitting there for like 2 hours, and one of the valet guys came over. He was a bit more of a mechanic type person, and he managed to finally get the brake. We had no tools in the car, which my dad rectified after we got back because we were going from New York back home, staying there for a night, doing all laundry and everything, and then we're heading down to Hilton Head Island. This was an awesome trip. We left our place. We're in Virginia, so we went around the backside of Pennsylvania, up the top, stopped at York to go and have a look at the Harley Davidson factory. We went down to Blue Balls in Lancaster County and stayed there a couple of nights. We went to Philadelphia and we're doing all the touristy stuff. Went to Philadelphia. We saw Liberty Bell. We went in Independence Hall. We went into the big food market that they have there. We went there the next morning for breakfast, and Dad and Brad stayed at a breakfast area that was done by the Mennonites, I think it was. And it was all fresh food made from scratch, and their plates were like about this oval and just piled high with food. And Mum and I looked at the plates and we're not eating that. So we went off this bakery. We found the little fruit tarts that have the Boston cream in it with the or the custard in there with the fresh fruit on top, all glazed and everything else. And we found a couple of the personal size ones of those, and we sat there and had those with a cup of tea. And the guys found us later on, and we're like, "How are you doing?" And they're like, "Oh, that was really good." And Brad had always said, when we go to Philadelphia, I want to get a real Philly cheesesteak. And so at the hotel, we asked the doorman, and I would tell it, doorman, best people to ask about things like this. And Brad says, "Look, I want a real Philly cheesesteak. I want the best one in town. I don't want the ones that the tourists go to and get. I want the ones that the locals go to because they're that good." And so he told us how to get to this little hole. It literally was a hole in the wall place. And we get there. The place is packed. We put our order in. There's a guy there with buns up his arm as he's making these different not chili feast. They're making these different Philly cheesesteaks and everything else. And he's making like 5 or 6 at a time. They're just on his hand up his arm, and he's just putting the meat in them. And it was just fascinating to watch this. And there was there was a counter along the back wall that had stools on it that people were sitting at. And then the counter where you placed the order and picked up your order was packed. But we got in there and we got our Philly cheesesteaks, and they were so good. So yeah, best people to ask for the best places to go in town where the locals will go will be your doorman at a hotel. And so from Philadelphia, we went to New York City, and we did a big walk. I mean, we saw the Christmas tree at Rockefeller Center. We walked poor Brad's feet off that night. I don't think he's ever walked that far. We did a carriage ride, a horse-drawn carriage ride through Central Park. And we saw the Blue Man Group one night. We did the down to Ground Zero on Christmas Day. And then we went to leave the next day. Now we couldn't disengage the park brake. And we had no tools in the car, which my dad rectified. Like I said, Dad rectified that when we got home. So we finally got the brake. It was the park brake. We finally got it disconnected and all of that. And the guy says, "Look, I've got it kind of working, but would recommend you don't use it until you can get a mechanic to check it out." And we're like, "Not a problem." And so we finally got on the road home like a couple hours later than we had planned to leave. But it didn't take long to drive home because we're just in Northern Virginia. And then at the house there, we got all the laundry done, unpacked the van, got all the laundry done, and then repacked everything for the next morning when we headed down to Hilton Head Island. And it was supposed to be like a 7-hour drive, and it took us like 9 hours to get there because of the traffic. And so we had the road map in the back, and I pulled out the book and says, okay, well, we can take this route, which will bypass all of this. And so we got to the next exit, we took that, and I navigated from the back seat, and we finally got to Hilton Head Island and got to the timeshare that we were staying in. It was a 2-bedroom one. And then the evening that we arrived was our wedding anniversary. And because it was 28th of December, it was our wedding anniversary. Mum comes out and she goes, oh, I just realized what day it is. It's your anniversary. We're going to take you out for dinner tonight. We're like, okay. So we found this Irish pub, no, an English pub. It was called the British Open. It's on Hilton Head Island. It's called the British Open. Best food on the island. It was one of the best foods on the island. And we went there. We had this Irish girl was serving us, and remember Dad ordering his prime rib was something like he said something like, he says, I want it rare, but I don't want it running off the plate. But we had a great meal there, great service. The food was outstanding. And then down in another area, in this little shopping area, there was a Greek place where we had lunch one day, and that was like great food there too. It was like, then because we're staying at a timeshare, they have the sales pitch thing. So we did the sales pitch thing, and we ended up with 2 coupon books. And we just went crazy in that. And we just sort of like, oh, look, we get a discount. If we go to this restaurant, we get a discount. And what we ended up doing, along with the tip for the girl, because we went back to British Open on our final night there. We were there for a week, and we had a couple of meals there and used our coupons. And so when it came to being our final night, all these coupons were for different places on the island for, clothing, for any of the retail stores on the island and the restaurants and stuff. And we said to the girl, we said, well, here's the thing, there's the tip. And we said to her, says, now, we were given these coupon books, and we said we haven't been able to use them, and they're good for another, I think it was like 6 months or something. And so we handed them to her, and she says, really? And I said, yeah. And so she starts going through them, and she's like, oh my gosh, so-and-so. And she was like super excited about the stores that were in there, because some of her favorite stores were in there. And now she had discount coupons in there. And she's like, she says, no, you don't need to give us something. We're like, no. You earned the tip, and this is just a bonus for you. And so she was like super, super excited. So I was like, that was pretty cool. And so we drove back home again, and that was our big trip that year. And we had a lot of fun on that one. And we took Mum and Dad to Fuddruckers, and Mum couldn't quite get the name right, and some of the letters got mixed up a little bit. And so we took them there, and we just had a blast. We went into Savannah for a little bit, drove to Savannah and drove around there for a bit, and spent one day doing that. And but basically we just stayed on Hilton Head Island and just walked around. And Mum and Dad at one point rented bikes and went for a bike ride around the island and things like that. But we just had such a blast. It was a great, great trip with them. And so I always have those memories of the trips we did with my mum and dad. And when they came out, or when we took Brad down to New Zealand, or they came up here and spent time with Brad as well. So it was a lot of fun. But anyway, I've got a puppy that wants to go for WAOK. She's looking at me. You can't see it though. Yes, I'm getting the look. So I'm actually feeling a lot better now. So thank you for that. Thank you for tuning in and watching. I feel better. So go out, have a super fantastic sparkling evening, and just remember to tell those that you love, your loved ones, keep them close, let them know that you love them, and because you never know when their last moment on this earth will be. So go out, have a super fantastic sparkling evening, and we'll catch you guys back here tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. Pacific. He konera.